Well, I am doing this one immediately after finishing the last one, which we're going to call music or something of that sort. Why, you ask? Well, because I still have, I have some of it open, I suppose. But I was kind of on a roll there, and I was having fun with it. Where were we at again? We were in 77. I think I'm done with 77. But there's so much to cover that I'm really having a good time with it. So let's just pop up on a 1978 here. Let's see what's going on in 78. Three Times a Lady by the Commodores. Heard that on a 45, which means obviously it had been out for a while. Wasn't a heavily played radio song. It was pretty sappy, but Rod Stewart and the Bee Gees were still covering the disco era. Now in 78 is when the movie Grease came out. And even though the Grease songs have just maybe a slight disco twist to them, um, they they were focusing on more of a 50s sound. Frankie Valli and John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John. You got these and the movie is about being in the 50s, so they couldn't make a disco soundtrack to a 50s movie. That would be silly. Anyways, once again, a movie I did not see until much later in life. But the music, now, we just simply didn't go to movies. And I'll just leave it at that. But maybe that influenced my love for music because here I am. I've been listening to music at this point heavily. In 78, I'm 10 years old now, but I've been listening to music emphatically since, even easily 72. So, from as a 4-year-old, and it's not because my parents were playing it. I play music now. My kids have grown up around music. But that's because I'm playing it. My parents weren't playing music. They weren't listening to the radio. It just wasn't there. So I'm gobbling this stuff up any way I can. And when the Grease movie came out, this says I'm recording. I really hope I am, because it usually gives me a time. Yeah, I guess I'm recording. I guess we'll find out the hard way. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm just looking here. I just want to be sure that I'm recording. I mean, it's flashing and saying recording, and the timer is the time on it keeps growing. What do you know? Hopefully, I'm okay here. Anyways, okay. So back to what I was saying. So the movie Grease comes out, and it's just rollback movie to the 50s, and it's just some dumb love story and everything, but it had some really catchy songs in it. And having no access to movies, because then you didn't go rent a movie, you didn't go buy a movie, you didn't stream a movie, you didn't pirate a movie. You went to a drive-in theater. If you were lucky enough to live in an area that had walk-in theaters, great, but the majority of theaters were drive-in. So anyways, that's probably where the summer movie tradition still comes from, because if you think now, look now, the big blockbusters are always released in the summertime. Probably comes from that. People are looking to get out. People are looking to do stuff. The weather's warm. And in those days, you went in the car. And I did go to a theater. My sister, on 2 different occasions, snuck me and my sister in. And those are stories within themselves. I don't. One of them was a double feature. And I think I'll just leave that subject alone. It's not something I'm really gonna want to go into, and no, not because there's really anything bad associated with it. It's just a silly side note, and I'm really trying to focus on music here. So Grease, my sister had the movie book. It was like a movie with snapshot. I mean, it was a book with snapshots out of the movie, like still frames, put into a book, and they had little chat bubbles, little talk, like a comic book, but they were real pictures. And I was familiar with how the movie played out because of that book. And I would read that thing endlessly because I was trying to insert the songs in that I was hearing on the radio. And I by now I was buying my own 45s. I would go to a couple of stores in town. There were 2 or 3 stores you could get records at. And I think they were about $1 a piece, but I can't be sure of that. That's what I'm thinking. And I would buy the records. And I had my own 45s collection starting to grow at this point. And when I did see the movies eventually, it was on cable TV, because if you lived in town, this is about the time in America that cable TV was starting to grow. And people were buying it. And there was always something. You could always catch something on cable. Premium channels like HBO. I think HBO was probably the first one. I can't be sure of that, but I don't know when HBO launched. Let's just take a look here. When did HBO launch? I figure since I'm going to bug you with all the clicks, I don't mind hacking around on the keyboard this time either. Okay, HBO launched in 1972. So, when my sister in town got cable, I do remember the HBO previews, the free weekends. That's where I would have picked up on a lot of these movies. Go Stay There, and check out movies, because I do remember seeing Grease probably within a year or two of it being in the theaters. But I definitely had the soundtrack going on. My 45 records, between my 2 sisters that were buying records and myself and anybody else I could get exposure to, and my AM and my FM radio, I was starting to get a nice firm grasp of music and enjoying it. You know, today I have a huge music collection. My girls have free access to it. And, you know, they really haven't latched on like I did. But then again, it's kind of this ubiquitous presence in our house, because there's always music playing. I mean, I walked out of the shower just yesterday, and here's my wife playing a entry song for me, as playing entry music as I come out of the bathroom and into the living room. You know, there's a song playing. You know, it's like I'm a boxer coming to the ring or something. You know, it's just always going on. There's always music playing in our house. So maybe that's why they don't have a hunger for it like I did, because they have complete access to it. I don't know, but I know that for myself, I was hungry. I was always hungry. Music was like food to me. I'm always looking for food. I'm always looking for the next song. Always looking for anything. I would listen to the disco. I would buy the disco music. I bought more than one Donna Summer record, I can tell you that. Why? Because it was just more music to add to my mental collection, you might say. Having a soundtrack available to me in my head, whatever, it was just there all the time, and I would take anything. I loved the Village People when they came out. Their songs were very disco-y, but they were also kind of funny and creative and goofy in their own way, and I've always liked a good funny song. You know, you had your YMCA's, and you're in the Navies and Macho Man and all this other stuff, and I liked that stuff. It was fun. I don't ever take music too seriously. It's there to make me feel good. It's there to make me happy, and that's where I keep it. Too Much Heaven by the Bee Gees. I believe I bought that 45. I'm not entirely certain about this, but the Bee Gees were so huge at this point in time. We're talking 78 now. They were so big that you would just go buy a Bee Gees record. And I'm still talking about 45s. Albums were like, $9-10. I couldn't afford that. And the more I think about it, I don't even know. I think the record player we had in the house was only a 45 player. I don't think it. Yeah, I don't think it would even play the big records. I'm not sure of that, but anyway, either way, I had the Too Much Heaven by the Bee Gees, and I am pretty sure I bought that blind. It was going to the store looking for new music, and just coming across it. Oh, Bee Gees. I'll take it because I know I can, I may not be in love with their sound, but I can trust their sound. I knew that they were going to have a very similar sound to whatever their last song was, and that I was going to get some miles out of it. It wasn't going to be something, I knew it wasn't going to be something I hated, put it that way. Okay. I bought the 45 for Grease, the actual song from the movie. I don't remember what was on the other side of it, though. Grease, what was on the other side? I wonder if I could ever find that out. I'm sure I can. The internet's so huge now. Kiss You All Over by Exile. Remember hearing that in the wintertime for the first time. Driving with my brother-in-law in his Chevy Love pickup provided to him by his job, which was for the town that we worked at, that we lived in. He worked for the city. Had a radio in it. We were going somewhere. It was wintertime. And that song was playing on the pickup radio. Hearing it later on, also, because at this point in time, I'm living almost full-time with my oldest sister for whatever reason. And so, spending tons of time with them. And I think it was at this point that they had a car that also had an FM radio in it. May have been the year that they bought this big white station wagon. But anyways, I remember her not approving of the song for me to listen to because she took it literally as Kiss You All Over, as in all over you. And I remember arguing with her and pointing out that it said, but the next line is, and over again. Kiss you all over and over again. I think it just means just keep on kissing somebody. And I'm arguing here, she's in her 20s, and I'm 10 years old, and I'm arguing with her. And of course, all she had to do is reach over and turn off the radio. But I believe I got my way, because it was a catchy song. It's still a catchy song today. Here it is, whatever many years later, and it's still a catchy song, 40 some years later. Okay, that's enough of that. Kissing all over. Love is in the Air. There was a show that came out. 8 is Enough came out. 1977. Okay. That song for the first season, or maybe just the first few shows, was actually how the show opened up. That's where I first heard that. I don't know if it was just on the pilot or what, but I've always associated that song, Love is in the Air, with that show. as the show got rolling, it became their own Eight is Enough theme. In fact, it was called Eight is Enough or something. It was just a show about a family with 8 kids or something. I don't know. Anyways, had that guy Dick Van Patten or something in it. There were lots of teeny bopper shows in the 70s because you had your rising candy bubblegum boy stars, your Sean Cassidy's, your Leif Garrett's, David Cassidy's, Andy Gibb, these little teen idol types, and the magazines were pushing them, the radios were pushing them. These guys were helping usher out some of the disco saturation, the demographics of record companies. You know, they're obviously studying who's buying stuff, and the teenage girl got put on their target list, obviously, because they had tons of little teen idol boys. Not girls. Girls of today latch on to female singers, yes. But when this was a thing, and it had been done before, but usually the groups that were fabricated and pushed were just like all, girl bands or boy bands. But the teeny bopper, the teen idol thing, you saw really thick in the late 70s. And like I just named off some of those names, they started to chart, and all of the girls had an Andy Gibb record. And Andy Gibb was, big collared shirt and a gold necklace, and you had to have your shirt unbuttoned, and they had their hair a certain way, and this was just how people wanted to look and act. And they really went after the teenage girls. But, there's Leif Garrett right there, 78. I was made for dancing. Were ya, Leif? Were ya? I remember seeing him in one of them teeny bopper magazines that my sister always bought. I'm going to think it was Teen Beat. Or not, Teen Beat, and then there was Tiger Beat. Anyways, he wasn't even that good looking of a kid. But he had blonde, like dirty blonde hair, and I remember seeing him in that magazine, and she was just reading it like it was, some kind of deep religious article or something, just enthralled with it, and they're just writing up junk and taking some pictures of this thing to sell the magazine. But I remember seeing a picture of him in that magazine, and he didn't have any shoes on, and I remember just wanting to beat the guy up. I just did the anger over knowing that this kid was probably a millionaire already, just a few years older than me, and he's so arrogant that he can sit there with his shoes off outside getting pictures taken, like on the pavement and stuff, like in a place where normally people would wear shoes, like walking around town or something. The whole thing I hated Leif Garrett. I couldn't stand him. I couldn't stand his stupid music and his stupid image and the stupid way people acted about him. He was way worse than like Sean Cassidy, because Sean Cassidy was big, but he played in the TV show The Hardy Boys, if I remember right. And so I could associate him with a good mystery and being more of a down-to-earth kind of a guy. But that old Leif Garrett, he's like older than me now. I wonder what he looks like. Let's see if we can't find a picture of him. Let's just see if he's he's probably bald and everything else. He's just as fat as I am from the looks of it. That little pretty boy image. Yep, he's just big and old and fat now, and looks like in all of his modern pictures, he wears a bandana or a hat. That means only one thing: he's bald. So, yep, he's got a hat on in every modern picture. That guy lost his hairs. Anyways, let's quit hating on Mr. Garrett. He's probably broke anyways and works at a Chick-fil-A or something, because all these kids all these stars from this era, with the dope being like it was and everything, they didn't stand a chance. Half of them are dead. Let's move on. Fire by the Pointer Sisters. I bought that 45. I liked that song. I don't know why, but I sure did. Yep. I don't remember when I remember owning the record. Probably at this point was watching American Bandstand. I'm sure it was still around. But it had kind of come and went. And no, not yet. On something else. Hot Child in the City. That one I had. I bought that record. I still love that song. Thought it was a girl singing. I don't know how many years went by. I thought Nick Gilder was a woman's name, and that was a woman singing. Listen to the song. You'll know what I'm talking about. I thought, man, that's a scratchy-voiced girl. I bet she's cute. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking, and I don't remember when I heard the song. I probably heard the song a whole bunch on the radio, because it was in 78, and I probably didn't even buy it for a year. Because I seem to remember being in 4th, possibly 5th grade when, I think I would have been about 5th grade by now. And so, I may have bought that one late. I may have been late to the game on that. I'm buying that one. But I don't remember when I picked that up. I remember by this time, though, my musical knowledge was really heavy because in 4th grade and 5th grade, we had radios in the room, and the teacher would let us listen to music, break time and all that kind of thing. And I knew the songs. I knew stuff about the bands. I knew stuff about the way I just knew stuff. I was listening to every chance I could get. I had records. I would bring records. Seems to me we must have had a record player in one of them classes. I remember I had more girlfriends at that point. Friendships with girls, because I had all the music, and I had all the knowledge, and I could tell them what to listen to and stuff. And disco was still at its peak, but it was, the lifeline was starting to give out on it a little bit. It was a very short-lived era of sound, and it never has come back. Although I do call grunge the disco of the 90s, because it was equally short-lived, had an equal impact, and is horrid music. But it came, you have to acknowledge it. You can even like some of it. But looking at the whole era, again, the way that it grabbed people and snatched them and made them, want to live a different lifestyle. And once again, it keeps coming back to drugs. I kind of see the two together, completely different, and yet in the same atmosphere, existing and doing the same stuff. But the 78 disco, it's beginning to fade. Okay, you still had plenty of it. You had disco clear into the 80s, but that was the dying breaths. In fact, it was already dead and coming back to life. That was like somebody resurrected it or something. Some people just wouldn't give up on it. But you had other groups coming in, like Double Vision, Hot Blooded, two Foreigner songs that really started an impact, because you started to get that clean guitar sound back, and there was no more trumpets being played or anything like that. No dance beats. You were getting back to cold, hard rock. And what's funny is I remember hearing Hot Blooded on the radio. It was played constantly, and it's actually a really simple guitar riff, and it, but it seemed almost like heavy metal at the time because it was in such stark contrast to the disco sound. So I'm listening to Foreigner, and it would have fast forward 10 years, it was like the first time I heard Metallica or something. Well, it was not 10 years before I heard Metallica, but just something that people say, oh, that's hard rock, that's heavy metal, that's thrash, whatever. That's how different it was. So when you were finding a station, we were drifting away from the stations that were playing top 40 stuff. And you got to remember, I've only got access to about 4 or 5 stations, and a lot of it depends on which direction. Because I would go out to my dad's trucks and listen to the radio. It would depend on which direction the truck was even parked, and what time of day and what time of night. So I'm running around sampling ways to get radio signals, and running across stations that are no longer playing the heavy disco rotation. They're the Village People are dead and gone. The Bee Gees are on life support. Blondie was existed as a punk band before disco, but embraced disco really hard, and the sound was there, but then came out of it and went on to, they kind of died after disco anyways. They didn't really do anything interesting. But I mean, even Kiss with their couple of disco songs from their was it Dynasty album, I think. I don't remember whatever song, whatever album that was. I Was Made for Loving You and such, which I actually still like to this day. I mean, it was Kiss, guys with his demon makeup on and stuff. Oh, that's cool. That's inventive. And so here we are. We're into 78. We're seeing less and less disco-y stuff, but the new wave of British heavy metal hadn't really penetrated. In fact, it would never really penetrate the radio market. It was penetrating record stores and stuff in the bigger cities and everything, but I had no access to it. So I didn't know that Judas Priest existed. I didn't know that just some of the other bands that were really, what's the one that Dio was in? Was it Rainbow? Was it Rainbow? Jeez, I'm getting tired. It is 2:11 a.m. right now, and I am one tired puppy. But I'm trying to crank through this one. But I keep wanting to think that it's the band that played it is I guess it's Rainbow. Yeah, Rainbow. Okay. Dio, Ronnie James Dio was the lead singer. Rainbow, Judas Priest. Oh man. Other bands, Saxon. Wow, I'm getting really tired here. Let's just press on. Because the point that I'm making is they weren't penetrating the American market anyways. So I did not get access to these bands, which I know I would have instantly latched onto because that was the sound I was looking for. I had to settle for what was available to me. The Jay Giles Band, Tom Petty, of course anything on the top 40, which was all, half of it was junk anyways. Your Earth, Wind and Fires. Some of the bigger British bands, of course, were making it over, like Electric Light Orchestra, Rod Stewart. Whoa, other people, I don't know. But definitely I had not a lot of access. If I had had access to some of those British bands that were part of that new wave of British heavy metal, I would have heard Iron Maiden when they first came out, like their very first debut album. I would have heard some of these bands that I didn't get access to clear up until high school. And just to fast forward that, it wasn't until heavy metal broke in the U.S. that suddenly it became a thing to go back 4 or 5 years, because heavy metal broke out in the U.S. in about 82, 83. That's when you started finding American bands that were playing that style that the British had already been playing since the mid-70s, and had been trying to import into America. So come 82, suddenly Judas Priest, they got a cool song. They're getting radio play even. And I'm all into them. It was one of the first cassettes I ever bought. But, so I'm missing out. I am totally missing out at this point on, here I am in 78, trying to find any songs I can, any music I can that is not disco, that is not sappy 70s, early 70s stuff. And it's not easy. I do remember going to the music store, which was a variety store at that point in time. And then, no, by that point it was the drug store. The variety store had closed down. So I'm in there going through, and what am I finding? I'm finding Billy Joel. Songs like Billy Joel Big Shot, okay? Because it's got some guitar in it. I'm finding songs that are, I'm still buying the Bee Gees at this point. Now I've jumped up to 79. And, but I'm desperately looking for something that is not that disco sound. And, boy, that was a big year for me, because in 79 was when Pink Floyd's The Wall came out. Now, I didn't get to experience the entire Wall album until, 2-3 years later, actually, from after it came out. So I didn't really understand the depth of it, or how good it was, and how mind-blowing it was to just sit and listen to it from one end to the other, and follow along the story and everything, and even sit there and try to decipher some of it. I had, only 2 or 3 singles, only actually 1 or 2 singles. 1, 2, 3. 3 singles were released off of it. Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2. Young Lust, and Comfortably Numb. It was a concept album. It really probably wasn't even intended to have singles released off of it, but they did it anyways, whatever. And so that was a big year. 79 was, that album was groundbreaking in many ways. And I listened to that album. I listen to it now. I'll put it on and go to sleep. Here it is, 40 plus years later, whatever. No big, it's never ever lost its sound. It stands up to the test of time every time. But I was listening to it, clear up into high school. 10 years after this, whatever, I would put The Wall on and listen to it. But disco was slightly evolving too into dance, and there is a slight difference. Michael Jackson's music of that era is a good example of dance music. People still wanted to go out and dance, but they didn't want to wear them disco dresses and satin pants anymore, and feathers, hats with, big top hats with feathers in them, and sparkly balls and gold chains and stuff. They wanted to strip down a little bit and be more like normal people again. but the dope scene was still big, and people wanted to hit those places because everybody had one. Every town had a place, and it was always playing the same type of music, same type of scene. There were no places that had a punk band in there or had a British band in there or anything else. It was, the big outdoor arenas and stuff would cater to that more, but certainly not where people were just going on a Friday night. So songs were disco's dying out, but it was evolving into more of a dance sound, and that's where in the 80s too we're going to start to merge into the road. The road is definitely going to fork 2 or 3 different ways, because you're going to get your new wave sound, you're going to get your metal sound, you're going to get your top 40 sound, and but let's just stick to the 70s, right? 79, we're just about to wrap up 79. Pop music. Yep. I remember the video. I remember it being played on the show Solid Gold. And which is funny because Solid Gold debuted in 1980. And I'll bet you pop music was one of the first songs they ever played, because it actually had a music video with it. And Solid Gold was the standard in top 40 music for, maybe 3 good years. Because if it came out in 80, they had all of the top. I remember seeing Blondie on there, and pop music, and Peaches and Herb, and whoever's played that song, Freak Out, Chic. Other songs that were on there, Kenny Rogers. Was Queen on there ever? I don't think so. But they strung it out because Solid Gold was on a major network. Now, MTV was going to come out just a year after Solid Gold, but MTV was on cable television, and you had to have cable television to see it, and they only had access to just a handful of videos, so they were just playing the same junk in again and again and again. So Solid Gold managed to keep its edge through the early MTV years, because it was on a major network and they had a lot of live stuff. Well, they were lip syncing. I mean, nobody played live on Solid Gold, I don't think, but you would watch Solid Gold 7 o'clock Sunday nights. See that? See how I remember that? Isn't that sick? And you would see bands on there, because I saw Solid Gold clear up to having Twisted Sister on it. And that's 1985, 84, 85. So, yeah, they were the standard for top 40 stuff. They would usually do, I think they did like a top 40 countdown or a top 10 countdown with the Solid Gold dancers. And, yeah, most of this stuff was, the dance music and stuff. They were catering to the dance crowd, to the top 40 crowd, to the teeny boppers, whatever. They weren't going to put Pink Floyd in their top 10. Never, not a chance. It was going to be Michael Jackson's and Diana Ross's and anybody that was playing something catchy, especially for the solid. Had to have that for the Solid Gold dancers. But other bands were, they were coming to a close. Casey and the Sunshine Band was going away. Earth, Wind and Fire were going away. Michael Jackson was just how he made it through. I don't know, because he was around before the disco era, during the disco era, and after the disco era, and his sound was almost the same. It was a very funky R&B type sound that he just managed to I guess it was close enough to just being plain type of a dance music, but I mean, but later on, some of his music, like when he Thriller, nobody was associating Thriller with dancing. There were some just pounding good songs on it. Anyways, moving back, we've got our Village People. They came and went pretty quick. Donna Summer, same thing. I mean, she had been around, and she was around after, but never. I'm in 5th grade at this point, and Styx is starting to make a splash on the charts. Now, they were around before they made the charts, but they were hitting the charts now. They were making a good enough song that they could be charting up, and people were enjoying them, and it was fun. And it was a break. It was a way. It was completely different than disco music and dance music. It wasn't. It was more of a progressive rock, I guess you'd call it, because it had a lot of synthesizer in it or whatever. But they could jam when they wanted to. But they kind of stick to a little bit more of a mellow rock sound. But it just, to go and get tastes of distortion and guitar through your childhood, but not have a steady stream of it, but know that that's what you wanted, to a point where Foreigner sounded like super hard rock or even almost heavy metal. It just demonstrates how little and how hungry how little I got and how hungry I was. So, and still though, because I'm trying to listen to everything I get my hands on. I'm listening to the weekly top 40 shows. I'm watching Solid Gold. I'm watching American Bandstand if I can catch it. I'm even watching Soul Train. I'm buying Sister Sledge album or 45s. I'm putting my hands on anything I can. So in 5th grade, I don't remember when I heard it the first time, but I remember I did not like the song by The Knack called My Sharona. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was disorganized and dumb. I did not understand the point of it. I didn't like the Sharona name. I don't know if that was a name by itself or if it was a take on the name Sharon. I had no idea. I just didn't like it. But I could sit and listen to Cars by Gary Newman on a continuous loop. I loved that song. And I'm about to enter middle school here, and so this music is, I'm maturing rapidly at this point, and my tastes are taking off, and I'm getting more and more access, and other kids, you get a lot of access from other kids too, bringing a record or something to school. Cassettes were just, they were out there, but they weren't thick at this point. We were in the weird transition. It was still 45s and cassettes. When they came on strong, but they just hadn't quite taken over to the point where it was the standard. We were kind of floating between everything, because in Cars you could still find 8-track players. AM radios and 8-track. That's what you'd have. AM FM 8-track. And sometimes just AM FM radio without any tape player of any sort. And you'd have to add the tape player on. You did not see record players in Cars because they couldn't bounce around. There were some record players that were invented for Cars, but it was just more of an experiment than a standard. It never really happened. Cassettes, you started to see them in Cars in the mid-'80s. And that changed everything, because everybody went to cassette right off the bat. Easy, and it wasn't because of Cars, it was because they were just easier. And people were sick of scratchy records. And records were scratchy because people didn't take care of them, and they played them on cheap record players with cheap needles. It had nothing to do with the quality of the vinyl. It still produced a far superior sound at that point to anything on tape. But let's move on and not harp about that too awful much. When the Electric Light Orchestra came out with Don't Bring Me Down, I remember my neighbor, Bill. We called him Billy at first, and then he became Bill, I guess. Singing that song, and we were throwing rocks at an old trailer house. And he was singing that song, Don't Bring Me Down, and he was saying Bruce, which is not the actual lyric. But, anyways, we were throwing rocks at this old trailer house, and he was singing that song, and I was like, what's that song? That sounds kind of nice. What is that? That sounds good. And he said, Don't Bring Me Down. And I think I went home and staked out the radio or something, because I was really anxious to hear it, because he made it sound like it was the best song in the world, and sure enough, it was pretty good. I eventually bought the 45. I remember it was a yellow label, yellowish skin color, flesh tone kind of a color. I don't remember much more about it, but I really did like it. I remember Brass in Pocket by the Pretenders coming out. They did a video on Solid Gold, the show. And again, nothing special for a song. Yeah, it's a good song. Pretenders, female-led group. It's got a nice sound to it, a little bluesy. But again, it was just a break. It actually had a guitar in it. It was a break from, and I'm scratching my back if you're hearing that. Sorry, can't take it anymore. Stupid leather chair. Just a bluesy sound with no dance beat to it, no dance sounds, no top 40 sounds. Even though it did pretty good as a song, it was just a whole different way to hear music, and I was just absolutely starving for anything that wasn't disco dance top 40, because the impact that had was mind-boggling. Before disco, yes, I was listening to music. Yes, I was enjoying music, anything I get my hands on. But you got to remember, I'm listening to the Kingston Trio. I'm listening to hippie music. I'm listening to, even some of the Beatles. The Beatles had already broken up and everything and were long gone. But here I am listening to their stuff because my sisters had it. Whatever. So I'm finding my own little niche in musical taste at just about the time that I'm absolutely saturated with disco and dance and have no access to the metal market, which is where I would ultimately land and stay. But that's okay, because my appreciation for groups like the Pretenders is there. Commodores, the Doobie Brothers, this is two I completely missed out on Lynyrd Skynyrd for whatever reason, and other groups that are like them, the Allman Brothers, Mountain. If I looked through my music collection, I would find a million. Southern rock, Southern fried rock, country rock. They had their time. That's another thing, is Led Zeppelin. How can I be a child of the 70s and not know Led Zeppelin? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I was only able to listen to what was handed to me, what I could get my hands on. Why wasn't Led Zeppelin part of that? It simply wasn't. I didn't listen to, I heard a Led Zeppelin song or two here on the radio. I didn't know who they were. I do remember hearing them. If I went through their songs, probably something like Whole Lotta Love or something like that, I might have. But even the radio stations, they were saturated with what was popular, because that's what the record companies told them to play. So they're playing soft rock, and even as the disco era is dying, they're playing freaking Air Supply and bands like that. You're not getting much anything outside of that. Now, maybe in a bigger city, they had the diversity, and that might be what it comes down to. maybe I didn't get exposure to Led Zeppelin because I was not a teenager in the 70s that had access to those types of records or a taste for it. I was a young kid when they were coming on strong. I mean, Led Zeppelin came and went in a very short window of time, and compared to, say, some other bands that have stood, forever. But I don't know. But no Led Zeppelin was in my diet. It just wasn't there. And so many other bands, like I said, the Allman Brothers, no. Lynyrd Skynyrd, no. I'm thinking that it really comes down to they weren't pumping out top 40 hits. The smaller radio stations had to play the top 40 stuff as much as possible because that's what paid the bills. So maybe there was a late night show because there was as I was entering middle school and high school, there was if you stayed up on a Saturday night or something, there were late night radio broadcasts of other types of music, and maybe that's what I was having to reach for, because I would listen to like the King Biscuit Flower Hour, and that was normally a concert that was recorded, some band. I remember staying up listening to that and looking forward to it, like Twisted Sister, some other bands. But anyways, I'm going to jump back to the 70s here. I'm already at 51 minutes, and I've only got an hour. And man, the time flies, because look at how I can just babble about this music. Obviously, there's going to be a part 3 and probably 4 to this series. And I'm going to try to get these up, though, as soon as I can. Let's just take a look here and see if I can talk about some more. I don't want to make 4 music videos in a row. People are going to get sick and tired of hearing it. I definitely want to space it out a little bit. But had the 45 for Chucky's in Love. That was my cousin's name, Chucky, and this is actually Chuck E, like the letter E. But we all thought it was funny. Chucky's in Love. Funny the way that turned out, isn't it? Michael Jackson was still on his pre-Thriller time, his era there, but Off the Wall was big. I remember liking it. Off the Wall was a good sound. The Police, they were still kind of doing that reggae kind of a sound. Police, they were in their own world. They had some hits here and there and everything, and they even had like the Ghost in the Machine as one of the coolest looking album covers ever. But it's just that until they did Synchronicity, clear up into the 80s, their sound did not resonate with a ton of people. Probably in the UK it did, because the UK was so far ahead of us with their heavy metal. I mean, I'm talking about Zeppelin and stuff, and that's where these guys are from, and Black Sabbath and Judas Priest, Iron Maiden. I mean, there's so many heavy acts that came out of Britain. Okay, but they're pumping these guys out clear in the early 70s. Those guys are not making waves in America till the mid to late 70s. So the new wave, not new wave of British heavy metal, but just the style of new wave, was starting to come out of Britain by now. 79, I mean, we got Ultravox coming out. They're a huge new wave band. They're unheard of in America. Okay? We're going to hit it in the charts here. I should go to the UK charts. But the Police kind of fall into that weird area. They're not metal, they're not pop, they're not blues, they're not dance, they're not anything. They're just in their own little world of sound. And maybe that's what they wanted, because if that's what they certainly achieved it. But here I've got 6 minutes left, so let's try and let's get up into 1980, because we're still looking at the decline and death of disco. Oh, it was a slow death, though. Don't get me wrong on that. It didn't just blink out overnight. It wasn't a car wreck with a traumatic head injury. It was on life support for a long time. Because just when you thought it was over, somebody else would come up with a new sound that was even ABBA, you know. They come up with a new sound that was just so close to disco, and Michael Jackson wasn't doing it on his own. Prince started to help, but you still had these, and then you got into this. I don't even know what to call this style. Your Greg Kins and your Nick Lowe's, and they weren't teeny bopper. They weren't top 40. Oh, that's it. I'm gonna have to think about that. Where to classify them? Because you had this huge effort to get out of pop and top 40 and bubblegum and everything, but people didn't have a direction to go. And so Tom Petty falls into that. I guess you would just call it American rock. And even if they weren't American, it was the closest thing I can come to a label for the style. Jay Giles' band. Even John Lennon's, before he was shot and killed, his last stuff was kind of leaning that way. Just good, straight up American rock, like taking the stuff from the 50s or the early 60s and updating it almost. It was a very standardized song format, and more electric guitars and heavier drums and stuff, and faster beats and tempos and whatever the terms are for it. They were starting to infiltrate, but they were definitely fighting. When in 1980, like when Queen put out like the Game album, and they've got Another One Bites the Dust. I mean, that's just a heavy song for its time. It really was. In America, I can't speak for the rest of the world, and I can't even speak for the rest of America. I could just say, in America, where I lived, that was a very, very heavy sound. It had distorted guitars. It had a heavy beat. It had a heavy bass line. It wasn't whining and crying about love. It wasn't let's get out and boogie all night junk. It was and Queen had been known before that and had been around. Everybody knew who Queen was, but that was like revolutionary sound. Like, wow, heavy, man, heavy. And I should probably what I should do, quite honestly, is get out of these top 40 charts now, because here it is 1980 on my timeline right now for music. And because I know I've passed where I was going with the other stuff about funny memories, and I'm focusing just on music. I'm on 1980. I'm really at this point starting to lean away from anything top 40. I'm 12 years old, heading to 13. Kiss is not making a song on the charts, plain and simple. But I'm listening to Kiss when I can, if I can, how I can, where I can. Van Halen is not on these charts, but I'm catching them when I can. I'm definitely falling away from the top 40 format at this point. At 12 years old, I'm just done with most of this junk. Okay? Which is kind of funny because I went so far away from it that I completely missed out on like some of David Bowie's really good stuff. Nobody really listened to David Bowie too awful much in the early mid 70s, but he started to come on strong in America in the late 70s, and I completely missed out on that because I'm just doing my best to get away from this slop that they're serving up on a list and telling me it's the best songs going. I'm looking for my own. I'm looking at Rush at this point. I'm looking at anybody that I can get my hands on, even the theme for the song WKRP in Cincinnati. It was a hard little song. Let me see if I can find the song real quick before I run myself out of time, which I'm already out of time. But the theme song, composed by Tom Wells, sang by Steve Carlisle. There, let's sneak it in here. Wait, is this it? No, not this. The end song. Closing song. Come on. Not that stupid theme song. Cares about happy junk. This is it. I know that I can only play, or I'll get flagged. Yeah, good stuff. Even that, it had guitar in it. It was catchy. It was nothing to do with freaking dance. Anyways, the video's ended a minute ago, and I'm out of time. I got to get off here. Stay tuned. I'll be doing more. Good night.